All right, punters, election season is heating up, and that means politicians are out there telling you as many lies as they possibly can. Funny thing is, we know they're liars, but we keep listening to them, and then we vote based on what they said, but we know they're liars. So, hot tip just right off the bat. Don't listen to what they say, look at what they do, and look at how they vote. Wait, are you subbed to the channel? Yeah, if you could just sub and then hit the like button. Yeah, cheers, punt. Anyway, on with it. You've probably seen news headlines like this getting around. Anthony Albanese, public sector splurge, cost taxpayer $5 billion. Why a boom in public service jobs as economists worried? And the channel that says the quiet bit out loud all the time and thinks that you are dumb, they've been talking about how much the government is wasting your taxpayer dollars.
Taking inspiration from Donald Trump, Peter Dutton has appointed Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, Jacinta Nampijinpa Price, to a new government efficiency portfolio.
Super original, Timu Trump. Super original.
Tasked with cutting the fat and the fat cats.
Government's taken a decision to employ 36,000 new public servants in Canberra at a cost of about $6 billion a year.
Okay, this is what Peter Dutton is attacking. 36,000 public servants, they're fat cats, they're wasting your money. What a waste of money, all these idiots in Canberra spending all that money. So, pause on that. Quick question, do you know what the jobs these public servants are doing in Canberra? I didn't, so fair cop, I didn't know. So if I don't know what those jobs are, how do I know if they're a waste of taxpayer investment? Let's keep going.
And growing every year. That's money that we could be spending elsewhere to provide support to people during Labor's cost of living crisis, or into defence, or into security, and into
defence or
priorities
security
for Australians otherwise.
Or other priorities. Anyway, we get the idea. Taxpayer dollars should be spent on taxpayers. So the question is, are these 36,000 fat cats in Canberra going towards helping we punters with our tax dollars or not? Peter Dutton is relying on you not knowing the answer to that question.
I think it says a lot about where we are in 2025 that I'm sitting here lauding a politician for saying we should spend taxpayers' money wisely.
I know, right? Like, isn't that, like, what a time to be alive when the simple, basic things need to be said out loud.
So they've got their talking points, they're repeating it for 15 years. It makes people think they understand politics a lot when they just go, oh, government waste bad, excellent. Government shouldn't waste your money, excellent. We hate government spending. Yep, that's the talking points.
Because we've forgotten what it means to live in a prosperous nation. But, you know, it is absolutely necessary. We cannot sustain the way that we are at the moment. Like, we are regressing as a nation, particularly economically, cost of living, all of these things. I think it was only recently I saw that we've seen an increase in employment, but I think it's because we've added 300,000 government jobs? Like,
there's a talking point there. We've added 300. Oh, employment's finally up. That's fantastic. Oh, because it's government jobs. But what are these government jobs? Keep that in mind. What is she talking about? And you notice very real things, whoever Evelyn is talking about, our economy not doing so great, cost of living really expensive, things getting more expensive. But what do they keep coming back to as the reason why we can't sustain this? Oh, that's right. It's government spending. They're never going to talk about taxation for their billionaire boss, Rupert Murdoch. They're never going to talk about getting royalties for our resources that we give away. No, because these Murdoch minions are employed to run cover for the real tax spludgers in our society, whilst misdirecting you to something else. So what are they misdirecting us with? Let's keep going.
It's hard to see, Joe, though, how Albanese could argue against such an idea, isn't it? I mean, if Dutton is saying, look, we should run a ruler over all of this stuff, why would Albanese not do that?
Yeah, how's he going to count?
Well, I'm sure he would say that we already, take every precaution to ensure.
Joe, you silly liberal.
So the increase in employment, they are public sector jobs. They are not bureaucrats.
Thank you, Joe. The first time we are 3 minutes 41 into this one little clip, and he has finally given context around what the 300,000 jobs are. They are public sector jobs. What the hell does that mean?
So that big surge in employment is things like aged care workers, cops,
Still all
nurses,
funded by us.
police.
Aged care workers, hospitals, teachers. You know how your old parents are not getting looked after properly and they're getting neglected in old folks' homes? That's right, because they don't have enough workers, so the government's put more workers there. You know how your schools have teacher shortages and staff shortages, you want more teachers. You know how you go to hospital and you have to wait 12 for 15 hours, 20 hours to be seen in the emergency department because we don't have enough doctors or nurses? That's right. They're the jobs. This is great news. We are getting more people employed in the sectors of our society that make everybody's life better. Aged care, nurses, hospitals. Where's the downside? They're about to bring it.
The Canberra bureaucrats, obviously that is almost impossible to justify,
which have also ballooned.
Canberra bureaucrats. So, Joe doesn't want to defend it. Here, Joe, I'll take it from here. Who are these Canberra bureaucrats that they're talking about, and why have they been employed? So since the Albanese government was elected in May 2022, the bureaucracy has grown by 26,000 places, or 16%. And it's gone to things like the NDIS. We have decided that we should look after disabled people and give them services. So that's obviously increased the thing there. And Services New South Wales. Now, I don't know about you, but I've probably seen an improvement. And when I went to get my driver's license renewed, it was a pretty good experience. If I was to leave a Google review, I was happy with my Services New South Wales service. So, that's pretty good. So Central Welfare Agency, that's Centrelink. So how much has this cost? Labor conferred that the additional 36,000 public servants in Canberra cost $6 billion. So these public servants are overseeing some fundamental societal infrastructure here. Now, and it's going to cost $6 billion. And that's where you get headlines like this: Albanese sector budgets cost taxpayer $5 billion. Oh, the Australian, it's $6 billion. It could have been even $1 billion more outraged. Now, as far as I understand it, fact checks welcome, citations necessary in the comments below. I'm just a punter trying to cut through the BS politicians spin me every single week. Public servants are people that oversee, administer, advise, write legislation for, and consult on the very fundamental structures of our government. You want to get welfare payments, you want to get your tax return, you want multinational tax bludgeon corporations and tax cheats to be caught using the ATO. You need bureaucrats to run the agencies that we have decided we want in a society. When a tax policy needs to be written, you would hopefully have people within the apparatus of the government to write a really good policy that can't get abused, loopholes can't be found by people with massive teams of lawyers. Now, there's a reason I'm using that as a specific example. Now, let's put this number into context. 30,000 and 36,000 extra bureaucrats. Well, let's go back just 5 years. Scott Morrison cuts government department in major public service changes. So all these Murdoch minions here, they would be stoked that 5 years ago, everything they were saying, government waste, government spending, government bureaucrats, cut it. SCOMO did that. We've been here. We have to ask ourselves, did that benefit us when this happened? Because right now we're being recycled the same lines every single time. Government waste, what is it? It's when the government spends money on services for you, punters. That's when it's government waste. We can't afford to do that. Cut those jobs. So what happens when a government does cut all those jobs? And this is what they will not tell you. These minions so concerned with government waste, here is what they're not telling you. Morrison government spends $20 billion on consultants and outsourcing public services in the financial year, because when you cut public servants, you don't have the capacity to do what the government is required to do. So what do? You outsource it to private sector entities. And I hate to break it to you, but there is so much overwhelming evidence that the private sector is more expensive and less efficient than if we just paid, yes, public bureaucrats to do the same job. Now, 20 billion, let's just sit on that number, right? Mate, SCOMO in just one financial year from 21 to 22 spent $20 billion on outsourcing. $5 billion in 3 years. Albo, that's a bargain. Once again, if people want to think that the government's run like a business, flawed analogy, but let's go with it. What's cheaper? Employing someone full-time, training them and keeping them long-term, or employing a temporary person that can change all the time, that you have to keep retraining, and then when you need to do something, you need to go back to that agency to get that person, pay them the premium, pay the agency, pay the CEO, and then pay the worker as well. It's cheaper to just employ someone, train them, and then you have the expertise in your business. That's essentially the difference between the two systems we've got here. And I will tell you one thing, you will never hear them talk about the $20 billion spent on consultants. Are consultants worth the extra money? Because they're a hell of a lot more expensive. There is limited evidence of the positive impact of external management consulting on private companies' performance. So, well, that's great. I didn't know that. So if you're a private corporation and you employ an external consultant, apparently there is limited positive evidence to show that you're spending your money wisely. However, the evidence is almost non-existent in the public service. So apparently there is no evidence that shows that getting external privatized consultants' advice benefits the government in any way. More alarmingly, there is an emerging evidence of negative impact. A study conducted in the UK, so it's the UK and Australia. If the average annual expenditure on consultant services for a hospital trust is considered, around 1.2 million, then each one would be roughly £10,000 worse off per annum, in addition to the consulting fees. So it sounds like they're just spending money and not getting a good ROI. Okay, so what are some other reasons why consultancy firms suck? Well, this might be the best example. They have conflicts of interest. They are private entities with more than one customer. If the government is also a customer and so is another private firm, you might find that the consultancy firm will chase profit rather than the public interest. This is the best example, PwC scandal. I don't know if you've heard of it. Quick recap, PwC used confidential information about Australian tax policy because the Australian government contracted PwC to write our tax policy, and it turns out PwC turned around and sold our tax secrets, sounds like treason, to their own clients to help their clients avoid our tax laws that we were writing so they couldn't avoid our tax laws. So here's the benefit of having public servants, aka bureaucrats. Public servants are governed by the APS Code of Conduct that requires that they act in the public interest, that's us, not political interest of government. So public servants have to act in the public interest. Doesn't mean they don't stuff up, doesn't mean they're not perfect. Plenty of examples of that. Robo-debt is one of them. But then we can hold them to account because they have to serve the public interest, not the political interest of what a government wants to do. And therefore they can provide frank and fearless advice. By contrast, private consultants face no legal requirements to act in the public interest. Now, if all that's a bit wordy, a bit complex, a bit whatever, this clip sums it up the best. This is how private consultants work in the real world.
You're specialists in transport infrastructure?
No, more general consultants.
Right, but in terms of specific expertise?
Well, the government seem very happy with the quality of our work.
On transport?
On anything they need looking into.
So, no expertise. Continue.
We would value your independent assessment of the project's viability.
In the form of?
An independent assessment of the project and the viability.
Sure, but?
Well, I guess it's no secret that, if it came down to a 50-50, the government's keen to move forward.
Actually, Ken, if it's okay, we might make a start.
Great show if you don't watch it. So why does the Morrison government want to spend $20 billion on outsourcing to private corporations what could be done more efficiently, more affordably? We pointed out here. Public servants are required to act in the public interest. So when a government goes to a public servant and says, please give an assessment of this harebrained scheme that we have, tell us whether it's good or not, and give us independent advice, they have to provide really good advice. But when you outsource it to a bunch of suits, they will give the government what they want to hear. As they're all sitting around, they're going, but does the government want a positive report or a negative report? We can tell them what they want because they have no obligation to the public interest. They are just serving their client, which is the government. So then the government comes back and says, look, we got independent advice that says our idea is a good idea, but it's actually not independent because these blokes want another paying job with the government. So they're going to do what the government wants. Now, once again, because everyone's so concerned with public waste, we've already established how much these private consultancy firms actually take. They actually cost more money than if we had those bureaucrats. I wonder why. Well, I wonder if it's because PwC chief got a $1.2 million bonus on a $2.8 million salary. So when you're seeing public servants getting paid $800,000 a year, $1 million a year, you know what? Once again, that's actually pretty cheap for what we pay this bloke who sold state secrets in a conflict of interest to other clients to make more money. These bludgers, PwC, all these private profit-driven consultancy firms, they have no obligation to you. They only have obligation to making lots of money. And turns out that when you pay $3.2 million salaries to blokes like this, it makes the product that they sell, consulting, more expensive than if you just pull people in, train up the expertise, and have a house full of experts called public servants and bureaucrats. There you go, Joe Hildenbrand. I gave the defense of public bureaucrats that you couldn't, and not because I love bureaucrats, but because they are required to work directly for the public interest. It's because they reduce costs and they're cheaper. They give better advice and held far more accountable than these profit-seeking leeches. So, the next time you hear Murdoch minions talking about government waste like this, if they're not mentioning all of the government waste, and they're not being specific and giving you a context, you can point to government waste. I do it all the time on my Instagram channel. There's a whole series dedicated to calling out the government and corporate scams that are being pulled on us. I will point at it, but be specific, because the only thing that vague, generalized attacks on wasting government money really is, it is trying to make you believe that when government tax dollars are spent on services for you and for society's most vulnerable, they're trying to convince you that it's a waste of money and we can't afford it. What do they do with those savings, and where does the $20 billion end up? It ends up in corporate CEOs' pockets and offshore in corporate tax havens. So anyway, massive thanks to We the Punters over on Patreon. These are the punters that keep me making the videos that I think are important, like this one about public bureaucrats and government waste, and not just the videos that get the clicks. If you like the video and you want to support the channel, you can head over to punterspolitics.com, pick yourself up a t-shirt there. Really helps. Give the video a like, the channel a sub, and I'll catch you punts in the next episode. Cheers, punts.